Welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, April 27th. Brought to you by Vunabaka.com, a new surf and water-based residential community in Fiji. Taking a quick look at the North Pacific significant wave height chart, we see remnants of what was a gale in the northern Gulf, still producing 18-foot seas aimed mainly for the Pacific Northwest up into British Columbia. Another little cutoff low off Japan, and other than that, trade wind generated seas over the Hawaiian Islands. But in general, we're moving towards a very quiet pattern. Making a quick look at the jet stream level charts, these are jet stream level winds up about 30,000 feet or more, and these winds help promote the formation of gales and storms and also drive the storm track or the forward motion of those storms when and if they occur. Right now we have basically a split, confused pattern in the West Pacific. Last lingering vestiges of what is a real jet stream flow pushing into Northern California, winds in the 160 knot range. Actually a trough pushed through, the final little trough pushed through Northern California on Sunday morning, and now it's kind of a zonal flow, but a little bit of a trough trying to get here in the Western Gulf, get going here in the Western Gulf, but that's about it. Let's put this into motion, see what happens. So you're into Monday, we get this trough starts digging out, but it's very steep. Almost pinched off, little support for gale development there, and just a complete mess going on here in the West Pacific. Mainly a big ridge, but even that it's poorly organized. So the trough gets really pinched off on Tuesday, but you know there is some support for gale development here. Counterclockwise circulation, 120 knot winds feeding into it. That goes into Tuesday, and then it pretty much pinches off and dies by late Wednesday, and that's the end of it. It cuts off, and then we just have multiple streams going all over the place, no real cohesive flow, and wind levels 90 knots or so. Not a whole lot going on here. Nothing to really support gale development. And it just continues on like that into 180 hours out. A little bit of a sense that this big ridge that built here will blow out, and then we'll get back to sort of a zonal flow. But given the time of year, I can't imagine that a whole lot of support for gale or storm development is going to occur. Given the state of the jet, we'll just go right to the significant wave height charts. There's nothing really obvious or great going on the surface level charts. So let's put this into motion. Remnants of this gale fade out into Monday. Another little thing tries to get going here west of the dateline on Monday, but it peters out too because the jet is just getting torn apart and providing no support for it. So we continue on into Wednesday and Thursday. Notice a bit of a circulation here, another bit of a circulation here. This is with that trough, that steep pinch trough. See if anything happens from that. Okay, and there you go. You get 22-foot seas. That's on Thursday night, so that's probably good for 13-second period swell of some sort pushing into the U.S. West Coast, mainly from, I'd say, Central California northward, focused mainly on the Pacific Northwest, assuming this happens. Then you have 18, maybe barely 20-foot seas, somewhat targeting Hawaii here on the same time frame. Good for 11 or 12-second period wind swell. And then that all just sort of peters out, and that's pretty much the end of it. And notice, also notice this over here. This is 16-foot seas associated with what one can presume is to be north winds, high pressure, probably centered right about there, forming the usual pressure gradient along the northern California coast. So whatever swell we get from the two systems we saw before on the U.S. West Coast, we'll probably have a bunch of wind swell mixed with it as well. And that's pretty much it out to 180 hours. So a rather slack pattern for the North Pacific. Next we'll take a look at the South Pacific. This is actually hindcast data from a week ago. There's the first significant class southern hemi swell of the season is currently hitting California and worked its way into Mexico on Friday and Saturday. It was fairly decent size up into Central California on Sunday in the 3 to 3.5 foot range at about 17-18 seconds. That was generated by this system back last weekend, 41 foot seas. Just thought we'd sort of give you a sense of where that storm was, and you notice relative to Southern California it was very far to the south, steep angle. There's the 180 degree mark. That's about 187, so it was peaked out, about 189 for Southern California, and for Northern California it was a bit less in the 186 or so, 85 probably degree range there. So anyway, that's what's happening. That's what generated the swell that is currently hitting the coast. Fast forward 1 week and we have a much less appetizing pattern in the southern hemisphere. Sort of almost looks like high pressure is in control. We'll put this into motion. We'll just roll it out, see what's happening. There's not a whole lot forecast. Basically, the jet's supposed to be really pushing far to the south, almost to Antarctica here in the west, and that's the prime area for really good angle swell. For at least North and Central California. But at some point a bit of a trough is supposed to develop here by Thursday in the far southeast Pacific, but for the most part, most of this energy, so we got 26 foot seas here Thursday night. That's in the swell window for Southern California. Most of this is targeting Chile and Peru. I'll continue to put that into motion. You get 28 foot seas on Thursday night, almost into Friday. And then another little batch. Here's a better pulse of 37 foot seas into Saturday afternoon. We'll actually put this in back a little bit. Southern California, but you see there's the 180 degree track, there's the 187. So again, it's one of these very south angled swells, if it even forms. Most of the energy again is pushing into South America, not up into California. So, but still, that could be good for swell about a week out. So that would be the following weekend. So it's looking out pretty far. We'll see what happens, and then you're into 180 hours, and that's pretty much it. So one little system, very south angled swell possible, and even that's quite a ways from forming yet. So given that less than rosy picture, we'll start looking long term, see what's going on, see if there's any hope into the future. Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia and Tahiti. Negative numbers suggest the active phase of the MJO, which would of course help promote storm development in the winter months. Doesn't do so much in the summer unless it's the year after a El Nino, and even then there's not much of a direct correlation between the MJO and storm development in the southern hemisphere, but definitely much more of a correlation in northern hemisphere, specifically the Gulf of Alaska dateline regions in the winter months. Right now, daily Southern Oscillation Index, 16.37, suggestive of the inactive phase of the MJO. 30-day running average is up 5.62, was negative. Here we can show that. Was negative. Good run of negative numbers, multiple active pulses of the MJO, westerly wind bursts, but that appears to be settling out per the Southern Oscillation Index. The 90-day running average still down to minus 1.85, but even that's coming up a little bit, so nothing really great given this bit of data. Here's another way to view that data. 30-day running average, graphically depicted going back 2 years. Back in July 2012, we thought we were into maybe a weak El Nino, but that kind of settled out with the numbers going back up into positive. Last summer, it was very much looking like a mini La Nina. And then here we go in January, we had that massive just downward spike, but now we've pretty much lost everything that we got from that, at least per the Southern Oscillation Index. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next month or two, but here's kind of the historical trend. Next we take a look at wind deviations from normal for the time of year, and as of right now we still have westerly anomalies, not very strong, weak westerly anomalies, a couple degrees either side of the equator in the West Pacific. There's Australia, Philippines are here, and it's reaching almost to the date line, which is there. Then once you get past the date line, it's pretty much a neutral pattern with easterly tendencies. So that's not bad, especially this. I mean, we've had non-stop westerly anomalies since January or even before then. So this is what caused Kelvin waves, and we'll get into all that in a minute. But so that trend is still continuing in the West Pacific, and regardless of what the Southern Oscillation Index says, this has been sort of a persistent feature for the better part of 4 months now. So that's interesting and good news. A week out, on May 5th, the models suggest actual easterly anomalies developing north of Australia. This would be the first area of real easterly anomalies that we would have seen in 4 months, if in fact they develop. Over on the dateline, it's still light westerly, if not neutral anomalies. And then continuing in over the dateline region, still light westerly, neutral, and then neutral the rest of the way into Central America. This is not surprising. There's been some degree of, well, actually right now we're supposedly in the inactive phase of the MJO, which would suggest easterly anomalies in the West Pacific. So, but the models have suggested this at other times in the past, and it has not developed. So we'll see what happens. Next, here's another way to look at the historical trend. Reds and oranges are westerly anomalies, the active phase of the MJO. Pretty much the whole month of April, there was some degree of westerly anomalies going on, and pretty much this region from the 7th through about the 20th was what we'd call a minimal westerly wind burst, the 4th out of the year so far, and there was actually one in December time frame, so pretty much 5 in a row, and that has pushed a lot of warm water towards the East Pacific at depth. And even now there's still light westerly anomalies, and there's no sign of easterly anomalies. Just if anything, it sort of decays into a neutral pattern. This would be the far West Pacific, like the Philippines there, and that would be this region, actually to about there would be Central America. Next, we take a look at the models that indicate inactive or active phase of the MJO. The blues are the inactive phase and easterly anomalies, or I'm sorry, are westerly anomalies and the active phase, and the oranges and yellows are easterly anomalies, the inactive phase. The statistic model here suggests that the current active phase is supposed to die out in about 5 days, and we just go into a pure neutral pattern. The dynamic model is not as forgiving and suggests a full-on inactive phase is developed, and one would assume some degree of easterly anomalies with that, and that's about a week to 2 weeks out. So so there's divergence between the two models. We're not sure which pattern will evolve, but certainly it appears that the westerly anomalies and the active phase of the MJO is going to take a break for a while. Here's the long-term model. This goes out 40 days. Greens, this is at the jet stream level. The greens suggest enhanced capability of precipitation and the active phase of the MJO. Oranges and yellows, the inactive phase of the MJO, and a lack of precipitation, presumably high pressure and presumably easterly anomalies. So right now, here's our current active phase that's basically tracking into Central America, supposed to be gone by about the 12th of May. And at the same time, the inactive phase, as we see, is building into probably about a week out, and it makes the standard trek across the Pacific through the 22nd of May or so. And then behind that, another active phase that makes its way starting the 17th of May and into early part of June, with sort of a mixed pattern behind that. So nothing strong one way or the other suggested here. We are in the springtime unpredictability barrier. So that'll run, and that runs typically from the Marchish time frame into early June. The models sometimes have a hard time getting a gauge on what's going on in terms of El Nino, La Nina, the MJO. So the short, the models give you some ideas, but they're not. You don't hang your hat on it, and basically you have to watch and see what's actually happening and use that, and that's where you can develop your trends from. Next, we take a look at sea surface temperature anomalies, and these are strongly influenced by wind anomalies that we saw in previous charts. The key point of interest here, on the equator, a couple of degrees either side, we have warm water stretching the entire width of the Pacific. This is a good sign. This suggests this would be, I wouldn't say it suggests El Nino, it suggests a tendency towards the development of El Nino. Most of these water temps aren't particularly high, and what we're very interested in watching is seeing if water temps in this particular region start growing significantly in the coming week or two, and we'll get into that in a minute. But the general trend is warm water, not cold water. Definitely more trending towards El Nino and certainly not towards La Nina. Warm water again the whole way. This is warm water relative for the time of the year. Across the whole North Pacific, clearly there's cold water along the California coast, but for the time of year it's rather late in developing, and it's still warmer than it could be, and the north winds and high pressure in that whole scenario is not nearly as strong as it has been in years past, which could be viewed as a bit of an indicator of something changing in the atmosphere, but not necessarily. Also notice much warmer water along Mexico, Central America. Bit of a cool pool here, presumably due to high pressure and upwelling off of Chile, but it's confined to Chile and not up into Peru, and if anything, water temps are rising in this region, and that's another little sign to beware or be aware of. Off Africa, warm water as well. It sort of is a reflection of what's going on here, so that's good news. So all in all, certainly no signs of anything that smells of La Nina. Maybe some hints of El Nino. We're going to take a look at another chart here. Same chart, different. It shows the actual some real hard temperatures, and what's kind of interesting is this little pool here. It's currently 1.81 degrees above normal for the time of the year, and that's been coming up. It was like 1.41 a week ago, and it's been stepping its way up. We're watching a Kelvin wave. It should be impacting this region shortly, so we're looking at water temperatures right in here to see if they make some sort of a big spike. You notice there's pockets here all along, 1 degree, 1.48, 1.81, 1.73. So this whole region, the Nino 3.4 region, which is about 170 west to about 120 east in here, is warm in pockets, a degree or more above normal. So that suggests something's going on, but it needs to hold that way for multiple months before one can really declare any sort of an El Nino going on. But it certainly smells as if that's what's trying to happen. And yet another view here, anomalies, sea surface temperature anomalies. Here's your westerly wind anomalies. This was as of yesterday, Saturday, and warm water, half a degree or more, filling this whole area here. An actual westerly wind, so these are actual temperatures, actual winds, actual westerly winds here in the West Pacific. So it suggests that even though the active phase is fading, it is not giving up the ghost by any stretch of the imagination in the far West Pacific, and that's good news. Next, a little bit dated data here from the 23rd, but still, this is sea surface height anomalies, 10 centimeters here, 10 centimeters here, 15 off the Galapagos. All this, these high increases in, heights above normal suggest warm water at depth. Warm water expands and pushes surface water higher than normal. So this is all like from the Jason 2 satellite, so it's pretty much well believable and has solid science backing it up. So this suggests a large amount of warm water under the equator pushing east, and we'll get into that right now. Next, data from the TAO array. This is the West Pacific here. This is the East Pacific. There's your numbers here. So this is almost to the Galapagos Islands, and over here you're into near the Philippines, and at depth 100 meters, 200 meters. So there was a huge pocket of thought to be 5, maybe pushing 6 degree above normal water that was here on the date line, driven by 3, if not 4 westerly wind bursts in the January-March time frame. Most of that warm water is seeping east now, 6 degrees above normal, confirmed by two sets of buoys here at about 110 and the other at 95. So the massive Kelvin wave is working its way east. It should be gurgling to the surface any day now, and we're expecting to see 2+ degree or more water starting to hit the surface shortly. Back here, notice the pool, though, is pretty much expended. We're down to 2 or 3 degrees, and actually in a normal year 3 degrees would be considered a Kelvin wave, just compared to where it was 5 degrees and filling this whole region. It's definitely down from what it was. We need some more westerly winds to push warm water to the east, but still not a bad situation at all. Here's a different modeled view of that same situation. Here's the West Pacific, East Pacific, and here's the large pool of warm water. And right about here is about 90 degrees, and I think the Galapagos are at about 90, and Ecuador is about at 80 west, and there was just little pockets of neutral water here, but now, as of the 23rd of April, this is all filled in. So the expectation is all this water. So you get westerly winds blowing here. It pushes water down to depth, warm water down, and then it sort of forms a pool, and then it starts seeping its way east, and then it gurgles up along the coast of Central America. That's what we're waiting to see. Here's the Kelvin wave, different model of it. I think this is probably pretty close to reality. I would have some doubts about the 6 degree water temperature back here, but up here for sure it's been confirmed, so that's good news. Something significant should be happening. So again, given that giant Kelvin wave and massive amounts of warm water that are here moving in this direction, right in here is where we would expect to be seeing 2+ degree water temperature start boiling up on the surface. And this is what happened in the 97 El Nino. It started here, and it literally came over a period of 1 week. It went from sort of just like normal or about, actually this is warmer than it was even there, but it started a little earlier than this. It started about mid-April. The first big Kelvin wave hit, and instantly this whole area started getting very warm, and then it started growing in coverage and pushing back with the limited trades that are here back to the west. So as that happens, that kills any trade winds in this region. That completely kills upwelling in this region. That actually helps feed more development of westerly anomalies here, and you start getting a feedback cycle where you get more westerly winds, warm water at depth, gurgling up here along the coast, warming this area, changing the atmosphere above it, changing the jet stream, and by the time you get into the August-September time frame, then you have what one could really call an El Nino. So that's what we're watching for, hopefully within the next week or so. So for right now, it's kind of there's surf, southern hemi swell hitting the California area, nothing really for Hawaii. Another system forecast in the deep southeast Pacific about a week out, and again, monitoring the Kelvin wave and warm water temperature seems to be the big focus right now, looking towards the fall. But that's our forecast for this week. Hope you've enjoyed it. And again, many thanks to our friends at vunabaca.com for sponsoring this forecast and bringing it to you. Enjoy. We'll do it again next week, same time. Thank you.